there is only one state called India which is there to protect this spiritual infrastructure. And yes, if it's reached its 75th year, then as Indians, it is our responsibility to use the direction that the scriptures give us. Did you know that Ganesha was the person who was the first stenographer of the Mahabharata? When Bhagwan Ved Vyas, conceived of the Mahabharata, he needed a stenographer, someone who would write it down, who had the capacity to write down such a great epic. He's like, who am I going to find? He went to Brahmaji. And Brahmaji said, the only person who's going to be able to do this is Ganesha.
It's easy to have mind-bending conversations at parties. It's not easy to have mind-bending conversations which are backed by the scriptures of the ancients. That's what today's guest will bring to the Ranveer Show. That's what today's guest will bring to the internet. I've had this argument with Manish Pandey very often where I've told him that, maybe India just doesn't have the right kind of communicators and the right kind of podcast guests. And his response has always been that the right podcast guests who are full of knowledge or full of communication skills, they're out there and you just need to search for them. Ladies and gentlemen, this is me introducing you to Om Dhumatkar on this episode of TRS. He's one of the most successful bankers in the UK. He's seen an insane amount of material success, which began from very, very humble beginnings back in Mumbai. He himself attributes his success to the things he's learned throughout his life from the world of spiritualism, from the world of ancient Indian scriptures. Lots of fantastic, spiritual, mind-bending conversations about time, about the nature of life, the nature of reality, Maya. All these kind of concepts are coming your way on this very heavy conversation of the Ranveer Show. For more heavy conversations just like this, make sure you follow us on Spotify. Every episode's available on Spotify 48 hours before it's available anywhere else in the world because TRS is a Spotify exclusive. So without further ado, this is only our first episode with Om Dhumatkar, and he's on the Ranveer Show. Mr. Om Dhumatkar, while we've had a ton of spiritualism-oriented shows, Indian culture-oriented shows, we've never had one with someone who's found as much material success as you have on an international scale. You're one of, you're going to play it cool, but you are one of the most reputed bankers in all of the UK. I've known you for a very long time in life, and I know that when people talk about the word self-made, there's very few other people that come to my head other than you. Like you're truly like a self-made individual. And it's a great use case for where culture, spiritualism, and all these things come to the forefront. Mm-hmm. You begin to apply it in your material life and then therefore find both material success and mental peace in many ways. Welcome to the Ranveer Show, Om Dhumatkar.
Ranveer, so I'm so happy to be here. Thank you so much for having me. And I see someone who represents a lot of the things that you just described in you. So someone who has been able to achieve a great amount of success and also be on a spiritual journey and share that authentically with everyone. So, in the same way that you sort of felicitated me with those beautiful words, I want to do the same for you.
Thank you, Mr. Dhumatkar. I'll be very transparent and honest with you here. It's very rare that we bring on someone they have to have some sort of online presence before.
Yeah.
And the stark reality is we've broken that rule for you.
Okay.
And that's primarily because I know you and I know the impact you've had on my life just through conversation, and I wanted to take that out to the audiences.
Yeah.
So maybe before we actually get into the spiritualism aspect of things, quickly if you could explain what you do from a professional basis, just so the audience understands who they're listening to.
Sure. Well, I head up strategy for one of the largest banks in Europe. In fact, very specifically, it's the largest bank in the UK. And within that, I head up strategy for their business banking division. What that means is we bank, any business from a window cleaner through to a multi-million-pound agency. And my job is figuring out how can we deliver a better customer experience and more value for shareholders. So the sorts of things that I've just done before I came back to Bombay was thinking, how can we deliver 100 million, 200 million, 500 million pounds of value? And what's the amount of investment we need to put in there? So if you were putting it in Indian terms, 1,000 crores, 2,000 crores, 3,000 crores. And what do we as a bank need to invest to make that happen?
When you're playing with money of that scale, how does it change your opinion of money, especially when, your source of your thoughts is spiritual? Like, what is money anyway?
Yeah, I mean, that's a really amazing question because, when you work in an industry like banking, you see big sums all the time. And I think sometimes you can lose perspective. So when I say 100 million, 200 million, for me, those are numbers. But if it's 100 million, 200 million pounds of my money, then I would think about it differently. So when I'm doing what I'm doing, it's very important for me to think of that as if it was my money, as if I was putting my money on the line and I had to get a return for it. But of course, spirituality and my Indian upbringing and Hindu background comes into it in a big way, even though I don't talk about it that much. So for example, in Hinduism, we personify wealth as Sri Lakshmi, right? And my teacher, I think it must have been about 15, 16 years ago, my spiritual teacher said one thing to me that really struck with me. So, Lakshmi ji ke saath bhog nahi kiya jata, yog kiya jata hai. Yog means union and a higher spiritual perspective.
What do you think time is? Like in terms of what, I'm sure this is something you've thought about. I once heard someone say that Vishnu represents space and Shiva represents time. Would you agree?
That's a very deep question. Ranveer, it's a very deep question. And the person whom I regard as my guru, Swami Chinmayananda, he had said that objectively, time is defined as the space between two events. I woke up, had a cup of tea. The space between the two of them is time. Could be 5 minutes, could be 15 minutes, could be 20 minutes, could be an hour, right? But what might be an objective event to you might not be an objective event to me. I might not experience it. You wake up and have a cup of tea, I'm still sleeping. So who am I to say, was that 15 minutes for me, 5 minutes for me? No. So ultimately, and this is going to be a mind bender, I'm warning you.
Sure.
Ultimately, time is a subjective experience. And Swami Chinmayananda said that it is the space between two thoughts. So when we are in a flow state, a state of focus, objectively time may go by, but our subjective experience of it is very limited. In the same way, when we are very bored and time is dragging, time may go at its usual pace, but you're like, when is this going to end? So time is a subjective experience. Yeah. And I think subjectivity is the starting point of spiritual discovery. There are many different starting points just even in this conversation, but we start with our own experience. Yeah. And then we say, okay, if my experience is this, then there must be something greater. Then we start to explore kya hai. And then we see that this beautiful universe has been created on the basis of certain laws. And actually, it's not just a universe, because we are now seeing more and more. We have theorized and we are starting to see evidence of a multiverse. There are multi-dimensions to this, and things are happening in parallel, and time bends over and folds over. And obviously you mentioned Interstellar, the movie, that gives a glimpse into that as a bit of a concept. But if there are rules and if there are laws for this entire arrangement where I am having a subjective experience, but that there's a sense of continuity, then there must be something that is ruling that. There must be some intelligence that has created it, that is sustaining it, and at some stage, the experience will fold into that, i.e. it'll end.
Even when you look at like a simple plant, like behind me, behind you, there is intelligence and design even in those things.
Absolutely.
What is in charge of those designs and that intelligence? Is it the same energies we speak about? And if yes, how many energies are there? Is it just one? Is it multiple?
Yeah. Like I said, ye yatha mam prapadyante mam tam sataiva bhajamyaham. As men approach me, so do I reveal myself to them. My belief and my understanding from my scriptural study of a specific school of philosophy. I'm not saying that this is the absolute truth. I'm very clearly, as a trained historian, which is what I studied at university, as a trained historian, I'm giving you my sources.
Sure.
On the basis of those sources, there is one truth. And it is said in the Rig Veda, Ekam Sat Bahuda Vipraha Vadanti, which means the truth is one, the wise call it by different names. And based on our understanding and our own individual constitution, we will connect to a representation of that truth.
Okay.
Yeah. So in my heart, I am a bhakta of Sri Ganesh. So Sri Ganesh is everything for me. But of course, I recognize that Sri Ganesh, if he is the ultimate power, then he also has relationships with Shiva and with Vishnu and so on. And actually, these might well be different facets of the ultimate truth. And depending on my understanding and capability at that point in time, I might say, okay, Sri Ganesh is the entry point. But then once you've gone past the entry point, there are other portals as well that you have to go through. So, yes, the truth is one. But the beauty of the truth and the beauty of Bhagavan, as we use the phrase in Hinduism, the beauty of the truth is that it can make itself accessible to us based on our inner conditioning and our requirement in that point of time.
I've been told that you've conducted a lot of Ganpati pujas, and in some ways, it's fair to say that Ganesh is your Ishtadev. Like, when we use the word Ishtadev, it's your version of God that you see when you've closed your eyes. And it could just be a light. It could be a character from Hindu culture. It could be a character from some other culture.
Yeah.
But everyone has this version of God that they draw out.
Yes.
Firstly, why? Why do we divide God so much if God is like this one all-encompassing, I don't know, Parabrahm kind of light? Why do we draw it into these different forms where it represents different things? Is it because for your subjective reality and your childhood traumas and your childhood problems, that particular God sorts you out?
Yeah, and your potential. So it's beautiful because you asked the question and you answered as well. Ranveer, I like your style. If you look into the scriptures, in the Srimad Bhagavatam, the concept of God is explained in three ways. Brahman, Paramatma, and Bhagavan.
Okay.
Brahman is the underlying reality for everything. Yeah, you see a bulb, the underlying reality for the bulb is electricity. If the electricity didn't exist, the bulb wouldn't be able to give light, it would not be a bulb. And that same underlying reality connects the bulb and the fan, because the underlying reality of the fan also is electricity. So in the same way, underlying reality of everything that's manifest is divine, and that aspect of the divine is known as Brahman. It is in and through everything. Paramatma is the spark of the divine that sits in our heart. Yeah, that is in our heart that enlivens the world for us. It is that cause inside me that allows my eyes to open for light to enter and for my brain to compute and understand what is going on. It's the life spark in our heart that's known as Paramatma. And Bhagavan is the personalized, accessible entity or manifestation of the Lord.
Okay.
Yeah. We don't divide the Lord into different, it's impossible to divide the Lord into different parts. The Lord is so merciful and kind that they take the form that is most accessible to us.
According to our subjective realities. And actually, even though we might not be conditioned in that way, that aspect of the divine leads us to different aspects of the divine. So for example, in my life, in this recent chapter over the last year or two, I have been drawn more and more towards Krishna. And I firmly believe that is Ganesha who is taking me over there to say that this is something that you have to learn and you have to understand it and you have to deeply respect it and you have to go
into depths to understand the meaning in your life. Because if we are saying the purpose of life, as we were saying, is to attain uninterrupted happiness, then somewhere there's a subjective block that I've put on that. And Sri Ganesha takes me to Sri Krishna, and you through that gateway allows me to go past that block.
Okay, 2 questions. When you say Sri Ganesha is taking you to Sri Krishna, it's the same energy saying, hold on, now instead of this mask, check out this mask.
Access it through a different gateway.
The same energy. It's the same one God which is showing you a different aspect.
Ekam sat bahuda vipraha vadanti. The truth is one. The wise call it by different names.
When you say that Sri Ganesha is taking you to Sri Krishna, it's a very interesting concept. Wow, I never thought I'd bring this up on the show. I'd done ayahuasca when I was 22. And my shaman had once told me, like that if you really scan your own life from a slightly spiritual perspective, you'll notice that your own life is like you being an actor on a stage. Now you enter the stage through the entry doors on the right or the left. When God wants to give you a prop or take you in a certain direction, it's like one hand sticks out of those doors on the right or left and points you in a direction saying, hey, listen, go there. It's kind of like your director. Now what this actually means in day-to-day life is, for example, maybe you'll have a dream of like one other deity. Maybe it'll come up a lot in conversation constantly. Maybe you'll just be on like social media, you'll be scrolling on Instagram or Twitter, and some big essay on a particular deity will pop up.
Yes.
And it will direct you in a certain way by answering one question that you've had for your own material existence.
Yeah.
So is that what you mean? That you're being nudged in like a particular direction to learn more about Krishna?
No, 100%.
And when you learn more about Krishna, it's probably going to answer your own material stress-based questions.
100%.
Okay.
And one of the biggest impacts in my life has been through the study of the Bhagavad Gita, which I started a long time ago. And I studied it in a one-dimensional way, in the sense that I only worshipped Krishna through the Bhagavad Gita. When I used to think of Krishna as that guide on the battlefield, and his friend is like fallen, and he is saying, no, I'm going to help you. And he gives him the wisdom, and he gives him the vision of himself as a great, as the universe, and as the multiverse, in fact. Yeah. I never saw Krishna as Radha Krishna, in a field and this and that. That was my limitation. That was my conditioning. I think what's really beautiful is my Ishta Devata Ganesha arranged my life in such a way that I end up in Kirtan. Over there we are chanting about Radha and chanting about Krishna and chanting about Hanuman and all of these other deities. And through that chanting, it creates a beautiful experience in my heart that I want to say, okay, I've had a blissful experience. I want to learn more about it.
And so what have you learned?
I have learned that in and through all of our experiences in life, the one thing that's motivating us and guiding us is love.
That you've learned through Krishna?
Through my engagement with, Krishna, through my engagement with the Srimad Bhagavatam, through the company of the many Hare Krishnas whom I have encountered, whom I deeply respect, whose devotion is an inspiration to me, and whose worldview and ability to navigate the world also is an inspiration to me, and whose respect for my differing opinion on some very subtle matters of philosophy is also an inspiration to me.
Okay. Does Indian culture talk about the significance of dreams?
Very much so.
In which book or?
In many Purans, it's spoken about. It's important when we say Indian culture and Hindu culture that we know the hierarchy, or at least the classification, even if you don't call it hierarchy, the classification of our different scriptures and what different scriptures speak about. And you can say dreams also appear in Buddhist and Jain scriptures, which are in some way different from Hindu scriptures, because Hindu scriptures come from the Vedas, Buddhist and Jain scriptures do not. But even in those scriptures, there are very detailed accounts of dreams and meanings of dreams. But if we were to say Hindu scriptures or Vedic Sanatan Dharma scriptures, the source of all are the Vedas. There are 4 Vedas, as you know. Rig Veda, Samaved, Yajurved, Atharvaved. Aise 4 hai. There are 4 Vedas. Each of the 4 Vedas are divided into 3 sections. There is Upasana Kand, which is pure invocation. pure invocation of divine reality manifested as, oh Agni, you are so great, you are so lustrous, I bow down to you. Oh Surya, you are so this, oh Vayu, and so on. Then you have a karma kand. Karma kand is then accessing those energies through the act of yagya and sacrifice. Yeah,
And sacrifice.
As in yagya. So sacrifice is often interpreted as, I'm sacrificing an animal. It's not that kind of sacrifice. I am sacrificing my identity at a divine altar. So when you have a havan that's blazing and you pour something into it, whether you pour ghee or you pour some grains, the thing that you say is swaha, I offer, and then you say idam na mama, ye mera nahi hai, and then you release it from your hand.
It's kind of like erasing your own personality and ego.
Yeah, it's dissolving your own egotistical identity in front of a divine identity. So that's the karma kand. And the third one is gyan kand. So gyan kand are philosophical texts on higher reality. They are also known as Upanishads. Yeah.
Higher reality.
Higher. What is the ultimate reality? What is the nature of ultimate reality? See,
like all these questions we're talking about.
Exactly. And they are brief exchanges between the student and the teacher, where the student goes and asks and the teacher answers. Yeah, of which there are 108 principal Upanishads that they say in previous times there were many, many more. What remains are 108. Of the 108, the top 3 are Isha Upanishad, Kena Upanishad, Kat Upanishad. And then there are rest, 105 more Upanishads beyond that, right? So you have Vedas, 4 Vedas with 3 sections. The last section being Gyan Kand, which speaks about a higher reality. Yeah. And you have 6 schools of philosophy that take that higher reality and interpret it. So that includes Sankhya, Yoga, which is a school of philosophy as well, and not just a physical practice. Sankhya, Yoga, Nyaya, Vaisheshika, and so on and so forth.
What are all these?
It's just basically saying what is the nature of reality and different interpretations of it. So the principle interpretation of the Upanishads is Vedanta school of philosophy, which is a phrase that all Hindus are familiar with. Yeah. And then there are different types of Vedantic schools, which is not the question that you asked. But if you say this is the scriptural progression, what ends up happening at some point, we can't access the divine reality purely through those philosophical conversations. It's very high level hai. Sometimes we're having a conversation and we are really connected into it and we say, wow, this is an amazing philosophy. We go and recount it to our friend and think, I kind of don't get it. This is too high level. So in order to make that higher philosophy accessible, our rishis recounted what had happened in the past and used those recounts and retellings to explain the higher reality and make it accessible to us.
As in they took stories which actually happened amongst human beings?
Correct. They took events that happened in this manifest universe of ours in different planes, including different beings, and they wrote them down for us. And for that category of scripture, there are 2 types. There are the Puranas and there are the Itihasas. Itihasas are Ramayana, Mahabharata. Puranas, as you know, is Bhagavad Puran, Garud Puran, there's a Ganesh Puran, there's a Shiv Puran, Vishnu Puran. There are many, many different types of Puranas. In the Puranas, there are many recounting of dreams, of intuitive understanding. And like I said, in Buddhism and Jainism, in Buddhism, for example, before the Buddha was even conceived, his mother had a dream. And in that dream, she understood that a great being is coming into her womb and that person could change the world. So yes, there is a space for intuitive understanding that we sometimes access through open eyes, sometimes access through meditation, and sometimes come to us in the form of dreams.
Okay. Let's talk about the Gyan Kand.
Okay.
You spoke about essays on higher realities.
Yes.
What does that mean?
So, Upanishads, firstly, let me just explain what the phrase Upanishad means. Upanishad comes from 3 Sanskrit words, Upa, Ni, and Shad. Upa means near, Ni means below, and Shad means sat. So the phrase Upanishad itself implies that there is a discourse between a teacher, at a higher level and a student at a lower level, and the knowledge is flowing from the higher level to a lower level.
Just questions.
And typically the structure of an Upanishad is there's a question that the student asks at the beginning and the teacher answers. Now what is true of the Upanishads is that they're typically quite brief. So the student in an Upanishadic sense is actually quite an evolved student. He has done all the meditation, he has done service, he has cleaned his heart. But in the ultimate reality mein na thoda uska doubt hai. So he'll go to the teacher and say, mera ye doubt hai, can you help me clear it? And the teacher will clear it. So for example, I said, there are 108 Upanishads, Kena Upanishad, Kathopanishad, Isha Upanishad, Kena Upanishad, Kathopanishad, and then the fourth one is Mandukya Upanishad. Mandukya Upanishad has only 10 verses in it. The whole Upanishad, the whole text is only 10 verses. By comparison, Bhagavad Gita has 700 verses. And on those 700 verses, we have multiple commentaries and we have to discuss to understand. But Mandukya Upanishad is only 10 verses. In the 10 verses, the explanation is what is the meaning of Om. That is the subject. Yeah, that is purely the subject. What is the meaning of Om?
So Om Dhumatkar, what's the meaning of Om?
So Om, firstly, let me clear two misunderstandings of what Om is. We, in casual conversation, say Om is a symbol. Om is not a symbol. Om is a mantra. Manaha trayate iti mantra. In Sanskrit, that which helps you transcend the mind is a mantra.
Like a pole from a pole vaulting
event. Yeah. So you take the pole, run with it, get to the top, leave it and go to the other side. That function is performed by a mantra. So the mantra Om consists of three sounds. A, U and Ma. And even if we look at it, the writing of it in Sanskrit, the two, curves, that is the start of A, jo hum Hindi mein likhte hain na, that is just the start of A. Joined to that is the matra which we normally associate with U, the sound U. And then on top, the Chandra and Bindu is So the correct way to pronounce Om is Om. And that is the mantra. That is the mantra that we are chanting. The meaning of Om, then as explained in the Mandukya Upanishad, is A stands for waking state, U stands for dream state, and M stands for deep sleep. So it's a discussion on consciousness that is observing all these three states. And then it says that these three states of wakefulness, dream, and deep sleep rise from somewhere and dissolve into something. That underlying reality from which they rise and into which they dissolve is a fourth state known as Turiya. And this is the complete sort of discussion within the Mandukya Upanishad.
What is Turiya?
Turiya. With a T, is the underlying reality from which everything manifests. So if we say, Ranveer wakes up, Ranveer does everything, Ranveer then goes to sleep, Ranveer has a dream, Ranveer has a period of deep sleep as well, and then the next day Ranveer wakes up. There's one constant in all of this, that is observing Ranveer from the point of waking up to the point of falling asleep, to the point of dreaming, to the point of waking up. Without that one underlying consciousness, or what we might call Atman, Ranveer doesn't exist. So that Turiya state is this underlying reality from which all states of waking, all states of dreaming, all states of deep sleep arise, and into which they ultimately merge. So we might say, in a very deep philosophical sense, Turiya is the ultimate reality. It might be Bhagwan, it could be Shiva, it could be whoever.
Would it be fair to say a way of looking at this is we are like a video game character and there's a controller controlling us, and that is Turiya?
You can see, the thing is, these are very deep philosophical concepts that are difficult to understand. But the reason I am talking about them is because as young Hindus, and this is something that I've taken with myself to the UK, and I've lived there for 17 years now. It's almost going to be half my life next year that I have lived these concepts, is that when we grow up as a Hindu, in our heart, we feel a draw towards this culture. In our heart as children, हम लोग जब मंदिर जाते हैं, we feel that we want to bow our head. We feel that there's a connect. We feel that this is real. But then as we grow up, it looks kind of weird. And it looks like people ask you questions also. What is this? There's a tree and you have put some sindoor on that tree and you're saying that is your Bhagwan and you're bowing down there. What is this? Your Bhagwan is on the road? People will ask you these. People will say, why are you cow worshippers? They'll say, why are you worshipping monkeys and elephants and all of that? Through the study of the scriptures, we realize just how deep our philosophy has gone. It has gone into the depths of what is it to be human. It has gone into the depths of, where does my waking state come from? What do I merge into? What is life? What is death? And in order to make that accessible, it has given it various forms that are basically created for my individual conditioning. This is the greatness of Hinduism. And that's why I talk about these concepts, so that young Hindus can understand that they are not just part of a random religion with a random set of stories, but all of these stories are connected to an individual reality, and that individual reality is accessible in our hearts. And we should be proud of being part of this religion, not because we are necessarily greater than anyone else, no, but because it is something with which we can break any and every limitation.
Let's speak a little bit more about Turiya though. What's down there? Or what's up there? Or is it directionless? Is it everywhere?
Any experience comes from something and merges into something. Underlying any experience is a reality. Any plant is born in soil, grows in soil, seeds the soil with its fruits and flowers, ultimately dies into the soil. That state, that soil, is the state of Turiya, from which everything emerges and everything then dissolves into. One way we can call Turiya in English is consciousness.
God?
Yes, of course. Ultimately, it is God. But God is a loaded word.
So
that
this
people
is
have.
one aspect of God.
Yeah. See, when I say God, firstly, God is not a Sanskrit word. It is not a word that is indigenous to Vedic Sanatan Dharma. When we say God, it creates lots of different images in different people's minds. And the reality is it creates trauma in some people's minds because they've had traumatic experiences associated with the word God. So if we are saying Turiya, we're saying that there's an underlying reality to everything. That is a divine reality. That divine reality manifests itself as Bhagavan. In the unmanifest state, it is Brahman. In our hearts, it's Paramatma.
So when you perform an Om chanting based meditation, you just sit in one place and you just go, oh.
Yeah.
That's the first kind of meditation I ever encountered in life.
Mm-hmm.
And it was incredible to begin there. And this is when I ate lots of meat, drank lots of alcohol, smoked lots of weed. Everything was on in my life at 22. And just introducing Om chanting into my life was a great first meditation experience. And every time I'd do it for 20 minutes or half an hour, it would put me definitely into a higher stage of consciousness. Like when I opened my eyes, colors were more saturated.
Yeah.
Life was slower.
Yeah.
My mind was happier, etc. Everything was nicer. What was actually happening on a metaphysical level? Was my consciousness connecting to the Turiya?
Yeah.
That's what was happening.
What ended up happening? Firstly, so you are connecting with a live wire.
Okay.
Yeah. So you are energized by it.
It's like touching a spoon to...
Yeah. You are energized by it. You are going close to a fire. You are going to experience heat. But actually, when we look at it, this Turiya state is inside all of us as Paramatma. It's around all of us as Brahman. What is preventing us experiencing it? What is preventing is that I believe that I am Om. As in this body, this person who works in banking in the UK. You believe that you are Ranveer. What ends up happening is in those moments of chanting, my identity as Om or my identity as Ranveer becomes less. It does not dissolve. It becomes less. And when it becomes less, I am able to experience the live wire energy of the underlying Turiya state or underlying divine reality in a more uninterrupted way. And that's why I come out of that meditation more energized.
Fair. Was it also the sound of the Big Bang?
See, in the New Testament, in the Bible, it is said, in the beginning there was the Word, and the Word was with God, and the Word was God. The Word was with God, and the Word was God. So yes, there are multiple different philosophies completely separate from Sanatana Hinduism who also believe that there was a sound and there was a vibration. And, there was there was only the sound and vibration at the point of creation. So yes, in our scripture, the sound that first created from a potential energetic state to a kinetic and manifest energetic state, that blowout, the sound that process created was Om. And at that time, because there was nothing else apart from that sound and that process, that was the entirety. And still today, as the universe expands, it's Om, the concept, the sound, the energy, the vibration, whatever you want to call it, that alone is expanding.
They say that any soul born in India, actually the last page of autobiography of Yogi speaks about that. Any soul which is born in India or that visits India for a prolonged amount of time is experiencing this material life from a spiritual perspective. And the conditions in India favorable to a spiritual inclination in life.
India is a truly blessed land. Why India is a truly blessed land is because for millennia, there has been an uninterrupted process of self-realization that has been taking place in this land, as well as been supported by society in this land. The full-scale infrastructure for self-realization has been created right from scripture to places of experience, which you may call temples. Mandir, man ke dwar, the doors of to open the mind. Ashrams, where we can go and get ashray, which is you can get rest and shelter from the worldly experience. This entire infrastructure has been created and sustained in India. Yogis from all over the world have come to India and pursued this. Now, it's worth saying that there might have been other parts of the world where this happened. And undoubtedly, there are spiritual places all over the world. But a sustained, uninterrupted land where this has happened over thousands of years, there's only one. And it's a slight digression, but I want to make this point because it's the 75th year of Indian independence. And sometimes people ask me like, yes, but you're all about spirituality. Why care about India? Isn't just the 75th year of Indian independence a political thing? And yes, of course, it is a political thing because it's, the state of India is now celebrating its 75th year. But without getting into the politics of the day, we have to recognize that there is only one state called India, which is there to protect this spiritual infrastructure. Yeah. There are other states to protect other spiritual infrastructures. I'm not raining on anyone else. I'm just saying that there is a entity in law that is built and that has been built around this culture, and that is the only thing that's protecting it. And yes, if it's reached its 75th year, then as Indians, it is our responsibility to use the direction that the scriptures give us to advance not just what a great country India can become materially and bring the light that we can bring to the rest of the world materially, but also spiritually. And to keep this as a space where people from other lands can also come and feel the touch of divinity.
Mr. Dhumatkar, this is just going to go on deeper and deeper spirals about the meaning of life.
Yeah.
Which is why I'll do exactly what I believe ancient Indians did.
Yeah.
When you want to capture philosophies and concepts within ideas that are easily understandable for the human mind, you do it through characters. And that's actually my inclination to doing this particular episode with you. For a better understanding of everything from Shiva to Krishna, to Ganesh, to Mata energy.
Yes.
And maybe I'd put Hanuman there as
Okay.
well. Like, I've given you 5 names.
Yeah.
And let's go over, maybe let's begin with Krishna.
Yeah.
Like, why do these characters and these concepts exist in Sanatan Dharma when we know that the actual goal within Sanatan Dharma is getting past the Maya or the Bhulok that we're in? What are these characters? Are they like flag posts? Are they pools of energy? Are they actual beings that existed in history before us? How do you look at these things?
I see them as different doorways to the divine. That's how I see them based on my scriptural study, and there's different schools of philosophy, or rather the specific school of philosophy that I have studied. But we have to ask ourselves, who is Krishna? And who is Ganesha? And who is Shiva? And what do these images, and who is Devi? And what do these images convey to us? Yeah. The beautiful thing is, without even intellectualizing it, each of these beings mean something to us, and we have a associated experience of them, and we can take inspiration from them
For what they stood for.
what they've stood for and what they've done in their lives, what they've been able to manifest. Ganesha was did you know that Ganesha was the person who was the first stenographer of the Mahabharata? When Bhagavan Ved Vyas conceived of the Mahabharata, he needed a stenographer, someone who would write it down, who had the capacity to write down such a great epic, such a great story, that had such amazing characters and such great development, but also such spiritual depth. He's like, who am I going to find? He went to Brahmaji. And Brahmaji said, the only person who's going to be able to do this is Ganesha. So Ganesha, he then meditated on Ganesha. And Ganesha appeared in front of him and he said, okay, I've got this composition in my head. I need someone to write it down. So Ganesha said, okay, I'll write it down for you. But only one condition. The one condition is that you shouldn't stop. The moment you stop and I put my pen down, that's it. I'm not going to start again.
Like, you shouldn't stop reciting.
Yeah. So you make sure that you have conceived it fully in your head before you open your mouth. So Ved Vyasji was fine. I'll do it. But I have one counter condition. That you, Ganeshji, can only write down that which you have fully understood. If you have not fully understood the depth of philosophical meaning to its final degree, you can't write it down. So Ganeshji was like, deal. Then the recitation of the Mahabharata started. And Ganeshji was writing. But likhte, it was so great, so profound, so fast that ek ke baad ek, the pens weren't able to hold. So then at one point, Ganeshji broke off his tusk and started to use that. That's why he's called Ek Danta, Ek hi Daat hai dono mein se. And he started writing it. Then what used to happen is that when Ved Vyas used to talk about it, Ganeshji was understanding and writing it down immediately. So Ved Vyas didn't have time to breathe. So he was running out of breath. So then Ved Vyas started to introduce deeper philosophical context that would allow, or concepts rather, that would allow Ganeshji to pause and think about it and give him a moment to breathe. So in and through the Mahabharata, which is a story, there are great deep philosophical texts embedded in that. Yeah. So if you were to say, who was the first student of the Bhagavad Gita after it was written who understood the entire deep meaning? It was recited by Sri Krishna on the battlefield, but it was first understood by Ganesha. He's the first student. And then you are saying, okay, well, what is the difference then between the Lord who recited and the one who understood it fully in their heart? Well, how can we say that there's that much of a difference?
We spoke about Ganesha, we spoke about Hanuman Ji, and I think this is a whole podcast in itself, which is why I'm not probing too much. I'm not taking it on deeper tangents. But the question is, I think the question remaining now is Shiva and Devi energy.
Right.
What is this? And this is, like Shiva and Devi energy both are energies I encountered later on in life. I was never drawn to them when I was a kid. I was always drawn to Hanuman Ji, Krishna, Ganpati. Then as I grew up, I started getting dreams of Shiva. I started having experiences at Mata temples. It just forced its way into my life.
Yeah.
Why?
Shiva, the word Shiva itself means pure. And anything in its pure state has no attributes, has no conditioning to it. So In the same way, if we say consciousness without any conditioning is pure consciousness, that is a representation of Shiva. Shivji is variously believed to be, some people say they have used the phrase an alien, i.e. not of this planet Earth.
Interdimensional being.
Correct. Those are phrases that have been used. They have said, these are credible things. I'm not denying them. I'm saying it. This is from a perspective from someone who doesn't know everything. That I am just recounting what I have read. He's known as Adi Yogi, the first yogi. All experience or the entire science of self-realization has been first expounded by Shiva. So various people have said many things about Shiva, but in its ultimate sense, the word Shiva means pure. Yeah. Now, Shiva is, in my understanding, in my intellectual understanding, having had some experience of Shiva and having studied a little bit, Shiva is, in my understanding, is pure energy. But in the potential state. To activate the kinetic state, you need Devi energy. That's why they are seen together. And in some forms like Ardhanarishwar, they are seen as one. So to go from potential to kinetic, to go from Shiva, you need Shakti. That's why they come together. It is said that Shiva deposited his knowledge in centers across the country. One major one is Kailash. It is said that Shiva manifested as a pillar of light that was visible in 12 places across the country. That's known as Jyotirlinga. Jyoti means flame, Linga means form. So Shiva has a deep history with India, deep association with India. And we are fortunate as people who are born in this country, even though some of us might not live in this country anymore, to be touched by a land where Shiva has set foot.
Why should you pray to Shiva versus praying to Krishna? Does it have different effects in your life? Do the mantras bring varied effects?
Yeah, I think, see, the thing is, we have to pursue a path of authentic evolution. Yeah. If you're on the spiritual path, we can do it for 2 or 3 different reasons. One is that mere ko siddhi chahiye, mere ko power chahiye. I want to influence. I want to sit in front of you, Ranveer, and influence you and get you to do what I want. You can use the knowledge for that purpose, but how long will it serve us? How long will it serve us? And are we making good use of this opportunity? Or we can say, I've come into this world, I have experienced happiness from point to point. Now I want to experience uninterrupted happiness. What start finish both ho gaya. But I am at this point here. And at this point, the representation of the Lord that most appeals to me is Krishna. And I will authentically start worshipping Krishna.
It's just based on your subjective reality.
Depends on where you are in the process. And many people have been led from one deity to another.
Yeah. And your Ishtadev changes as your life progresses.
It can happen. It has happened.
Is it fair to think that when you want to move from material success or, fame and these kind of things to detachment, you shift from Krishna to Shiva energy?
No, Krishna, his whole life demonstrates detachment.
Why do you pray to Krishna?
Krishna appeared in a cell, in a jail cell in Mathura. At the point of birth, or not birth, appearance, at the point of appearance, he was taken and carted away to some other place. Yeah. And in Gokul Dham, he stayed for a period of time. Then for various reasons, they had to move to Vrindavan. For Vrindavan, he stayed for a period of time. There, with all his gopas and gopis, he played so many leelas. But at some point, he had to leave that. And he had to go. And then he went across and he had to perform the task of killing his uncle for the establishment of dharma. He did what he needed to do. Then at one point, he had to leave his entire kingdom and move his entire clan to the other side of the country, which he did. He then went, and at one point, he had to be the catalyst in a war that was hugely destructive on earth at that point in time for the higher purpose. And he did that. Then after 30 years after that war, he had to witness his own clan destroying each other. And then he exited his time on earth. Krishna did this whole thing with a smile on his face. I don't know of one person who will go through even 1 ounce of those challenges with a smile on their face. If this is not detachment, then I don't know what is.
In yogic philosophy, they say that when you pray to a particular deity, you start gaining character traits of that deity. That's how my perception of these things is.
Yeah.
So what are the character traits of Krishna after you say all these things? Was he a mentor? Was he a warrior? Was he a king? Was he someone who was detached? Like, was he a recluse?
He was all of those things and more.
So anything you wish to become, like he opens up possibility.
All possibilities are open to you.
Versus Shiva doing what?
Also, all possibilities are open to Shiva. But the thing is, you know what? See, sometimes I am at a place where I want to go, say, from Mumbai to Pune. Right? I want to go from Mumbai to Pune. I might be right next to the airport in Santa Cruz in Mumbai. I might be right next to wherever the airport, where I want to go is right next to the airport in Pune. Then I'll take the flight and go. Then I'm maybe next to the train, or it's most convenient to take the train, and then I'll take the train and go. Sometimes I might drive. So this is the thing. It's like wherever we are and where we want to get to, that mean will take us to the destination. Yeah. So we have to be authentic and true to our hearts. And you say, okay, bhai, I am connected to Hanuman, and Hanuman will take me. And actually, the deity that comes to us is the character traits that we want to manifest in that lifetime.
Or that phase of our
Or
life.
that phase of our lifetime. And you end up having beautiful experiences through the pursuit. And I have, yes, my Ishtadevta is Ganesha, but I have with sincerity worshipped all of these different forms, all of these different divine energies or different manifestations of the divine. And I've had beautiful experiences with them. In Hampi, in South India, in Karnataka, there is a hill, Anjaneyadri Hill, which is known as the birthplace of Hanuman. Now, there are some people say it's near Nasik, some people say it's that place. I don't know all of that. But when I went there, one day when I was going to Hampi, this is nearly 10 years ago now, we were all there, 4 of us school friends were there for a holiday. And I knew that this temple existed and I wanted to go and have darshan there. My friends were asleep. 4:30 in the morning, I woke up. Reached around 5:15 after, And at that time, there was no one there. There were some stalls on the, at the foot of the hill. They were shut. There were no vendors. There were nothing. There were 2 dogs. There were 2 dogs in the darkness. They saw me approaching and they started running towards the car. And I thought, okay, boss, there are 2 dogs. They're going to jump on the car. They're going to be aggressive. Mera nahi hoga. I got out of the car. They were so happy. This person has come. And I said, okay, well, this is a sign. And they started going thoda ahead and looking back whether I'm there or not. I started following them. At that time, this was like 5:15 pitch darkness before sunrise. You go in there and these 2 dogs are guiding me. And then you get to a point where they've painted the steps. Yeah, this is literally steps cut into rock, taking you to the top of the hill. One point they reached there, the dogs diverged to the other side. Yeah, away from the path. So I was like, okay, the dogs have got me to this point, and let me follow them for a bit. Over there, they took me there was a samadhi.
What does that mean?
Samadhi is a memorial, in this context, is a memorial to a spiritual being. Typically, what ends up happening is where the spiritual being either was cremated, or actually in Hinduism, if someone has attained self-realization, we don't cremate, we bury. So that was, I don't know what specifically had happened here, but the samadhi was there. So we have grown up with the concept of having a guru and being at a samadhi. So I knew that there's some great being over here. Bowed my hand, did a parikrama, went round it once. There was some dirt over there, cleaned it up. There was a bin on the side, put it in the bin, tied it up, and just thanked them for bringing me to them for whatever reason I didn't know. I went, and by that time I turned around, the two dogs had disappeared. They were not magical. They were there. They just gone down there.
Why weren't they magical?
They had left. They had left the scene in that period of time. And by that time, sufficient light had risen that the path was illumined on its own. When after that experience, went up the hill, and you go up that Anjaneya hill, there are points where you have to literally crawl under the rock to get to the other side, because again, this is not a man-made temple with parking lot and arranged everything. You are going through a process, and you are going through a little bit of hardship to get to the source. Went up there, and it was so beautiful. Like the temple hadn't even opened yet, and I went in. I was like, "Kya darwaza khula hai, andar jao." And the deity wasn't visible, so I sat there and I started meditating. At that time, one young priest was there. He was clean, pandit the. वो साफ सफाई कर रहे थे. He was going to say नहीं तो he actually started to say नहीं आप उठिए आप बाहर जाइए, because a lot of people go there as a sunrise point, so they'll go and watch the sunrise in Hampi over there. I had gone there to do Hanuman Ji Darshan. There were then two sadhus, not the pandit. There were two sadhus. They said to the pandit कि नहीं उसको रहने दीजिए यहाँ पे. I finished my meditation, and then they offered me a cup of tea. फिर बातों में I said कि नीचे there was one samadhi who was there. Said this was the original sadhu who used to be at this point. And वहाँ पे उनकी गुफा है, the cave in which he lived. He used to come up here and he used to offer worship here. We are his students. So now it could be a tale of complete coincidence, and this is not something that I recount too much, because again, these stories then become like, oh, it's a bit fantastical and this and that. But this is a true occurrence, and nothing supernatural has taken place. One could say it was entirely coincidence. It was entirely coincidence that two dogs found me, entirely coincidence that they got very happy, entirely coincidence that they led me up a hill in the darkness, entirely coincidence that the sadhu stopped the pandit from throwing me out of the place, entirely coincidental from the goodness of their heart that they gave me some tea. But somewhere you have to, if your heart is full of love and you've gone there for a purpose, you have to see the divine connection from all of these. That Hanuman Ji was there and he made all of this happen, and he gave me a beautiful darshan for him. So who is to say that Hanuman Ji doesn't exist?
Yeah. Who is to say that we're not going to do 10 more podcasts?
Ranveer, I find this really funny, because you are someone I know, someone whom I've seen from a long time. You are someone whom I deeply respect. You are someone whom I admire as well. I think what you have been able to achieve is phenomenal. And you have had some really great people in this seat. And I am really blessed to be in the same space as so many great spiritual masters who have come before me and said some amazing things.
I knew you from my childhood, and I remember every conversation I had with you when I was a kid. I've told you this story 100 times already, but I'd say it to the audience. Like, I always wanted to, I don't know whether I wanted to have elder brothers in life, have elder teammates in life, or learn from older people. And you were always like one of those people, ever since like the first time I saw you, like in life. So for me, this particular episode is just a material tick mark also that I've done something with Om. So that's the honest perspective. But in saying that, there's not been a single conversation with you where you've not given me data points that absolutely mess up my head in a positive way. So I just wanted to mess up the audience with me today. That's all.
Good. Well, I really hope that they have gained something. And I really hope, if anything else, that they have gained a deeper understanding of the higher reality that our Sanatan culture represents. If they are Sanatanis, may they go deeper and deeper. And if they are not, may they at least use this as an entry point. कि भाई मुझे कुछ तो समझ में आया, शायद मैं इसको लेके ज़्यादा explore करूँगा.
Om Dhumatkar, the internet has to get to know you. It's just started getting to know you through this episode, but I'm waiting to create a lot more podcasts with you. So thank you, brother.
Thank you, Ranveer.
I hope you had fun.
I had a great time.
Awesome. So that was the episode for today, everybody. I hope you enjoyed it. If you stuck around till this point, it probably means that your mind is bent, and that was our intention with this episode. Remember, if episodes like this get too heavy for you, You can always follow all the highlights of every single episode, including content that doesn't make it to the final cut of the podcast, on our YouTube channel, TRS Clips, for highlights of the Ranveer Show. Lots more coming up with Om Dhumatkar. For now, I'd love to know in the comment section what you guys would like us to unpack with this man. He's someone who's a lifelong learner. He's someone who has hordes of knowledge just packed into his mind. He's someone who I turn to when it comes to philosophical questions. And I'm glad I could bring him and introduce him to our audience on TRS. This was only our first episode with Om. For more episodes just like this, make sure you follow us on Spotify. Every episode's available on Spotify 48 hours before it's available anywhere else in the world. Lots more coming up on TRS.